So even if there was a God, the Bible would still be wrong about all of that. No real God did any of that. The Bible God, because the Bible God is just a character, a villain in his own story. Of course he's the villain. He bragged that he was the one who created evil, that he's the one who brings darkness and disaster, and that besides him there is none else, meaning there's no one else to blame. So anytime anything bad happens, God did it. For example, in another one of those stories that we know for certain really didn't happen, God had to cause all of this calamity to get Pharaoh to let his people go. But then God jumps over to the black side of the chessboard to harden Pharaoh's heart so that he could jump back to the white side again and kill a bunch of kids to get vengeance essentially against himself. And Pharaoh was just a pawn, as were we all, and God has no one else to play with. Maybe God should make some friends, because he is the only one who can literally make friends. So why not? Make a friend and give him equal powers for a chance at mutual respect. If Genie could do that for Jafar, God could do that. I can do anything, right? Until it comes to raising money or building some or spreading his word out there, because then Mr. Omnipotent is suddenly disabled and needs us to do his work for him. So maybe a real God wouldn't lie, but all the mythical gods of every religion can and very often do, according to the various fables and folklore written about them. The Bible is no exception. For example, El, Allah, Abba, Yahweh, Jehovah, Santos, Devolder, whatever his name was that day, he said that no man may look upon him and live. God had no power over that. And indeed, the Gospel of John says something similar, that no man had ever seen God, not at any time. So was God lying about that? Is John? Well, both are, because the Bible already says early on that several people had already seen God and lived. Adam saw God walking in the garden. Abraham recognized his face as one of three men who came to his door. The other two were the angels who went down to Sodom, while God sat under a tree and ate lunch with Abraham. Jacob had to have seen God because they got into a wrestling match and they wrestled all night long. Although the traditional interpretation is that God didn't really touch Jacob in the hollow of the thigh, not like that. And it wasn't really God either, but an angel disguised as God, a representative of God, like God's stand-in stunt double. We don't know what angel it was wrestling with Jacob, who then lied and said they were God. Maybe that angel was Katara Ravash. Then in Exodus, we read that Moses and his brother and 72 other dudes all went up the mountain and they saw God. Quite clearly, they saw God. So regardless how you interpret it, John is wrong for saying that no one had ever seen God. And remember also that the reason John gives for why they'd never seen God was because God is spirit. He doesn't have a body that you could look at, even though Genesis and Exodus both already said that no, God has a body that we can see and that he walks, talks, sits, eats, turns his head, waves his hand, shows his backside, and cheats at wrestling. This passage says that they saw God, and it mentioned the bright blue pavement that he was standing on. They were talking about his feet. It clearly says that they saw his feet. Would John have known that? Should have. So that too would be a lie. In fact, just calling it the Gospel of John is itself a lie, because John didn't write it. He would have been long dead by the time this thing was written. Anybody could claim credit for writing that particular gospel.
And I got away with it then.
God says that no man may see my face and live, as if he couldn't fix it so that, see his face if he wanted them to see his face. We were supposed to believe that God is powerless and endless, and we have to assume that those 74 people standing there could see his face, at least from a distance, unless God was wearing a veil, like some ancient gods like to do. The Bible contradicts that, not just by saying that Moses came close to God, but earlier in the same book it says that Moses spoke with God face to face as a man speaks to his friend. So God lied later on, and the author of this chapter, or that one, must have lied too. Wouldn't be the last time, because you've got all these prophets speaking for God like Isaiah and Ezekiel, and they got everything wrong. And it wasn't the first time God lied either. Practically everything God ever says wrong, right from the very beginning.